we're about the quality of life issues, working together, and by all means encourage other people to come here. We're introducing a lot of great speakers, a lot of good information we're putting out there.
John and I were at Columbia University at Beyond the Bars seminar in March, and we went to a wonderful workshop that was headed by Liz Alexander. And we were blown away with Liz's passion and the programs that she's been running, particularly for young girls. And she was telling us about some of the programs that she runs in Rikers Island. And I have a whole list of things here, of credentials and what she's head of and so forth. I won't tell you all of those, but just know that there's lots there. And I'd rather get Liz up to the front to tell us about her work and how important her work is, so that these programs that are running can help people move back into life without doing the 101 offences and all the ticketing that goes with it. So Liz, you're one of those connections, and we really value that, and thank you for coming because you're helping us. So I'll ask you to come. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Liz Alexander. I'm really excited to be here. I really am most excited about being in the company of folks who are really committed to strengthening and improving their communities, right? And then ultimately society at large. So I'm really honored to be here. So just briefly, again, my name is Liz Alexander. I founded a project called She Dreams of Freedrom, where I use media in particular to spread awareness about the girls in the juvenile justice system. So just briefly, I come from a juvenile justice background, recent transplant to New York from Chicago. And so really moved to transition to New York because I know right now, locally and through the Administration of Children's Services, there's a literal focus and emphasis on how do we best support system involve girls. And so I come from this having been in an advocacy position in Chicago, having gone in prisons, and really being in a space where I recognize when we are at the decision table talking about policies, interventions, diversions, preventions, girls were never in the conversation. And so I'll be talking about that. So just to set the context, just because we're socially situated, I know Covenant House is not far from here. Anybody familiar with Covenant House, the homeless shelter for youth? Right. And so I just, again, to set the context, I just want to tell a story. So I've met a couple youth who are affiliated with the Covenant House, in particular a girl named Jay. Jay, 13 years old, identifying as gender nonconforming, is in this space where she's just really coming to terms and negotiating her sexuality, right? When we look at adolescent development, that's kind of normal. But just the family context that Jay is coming from, her parents don't accept her, right? And so that has actually been one of the main factors that has led to her homelessness. And so while in this facility, Jay is given hygiene supplies. But for Jay, these supplies break her out, right? And so Jay doesn't really have money aside from just the allotted allowance that they get. And so what Jay does is she has had just a bad habit of stealing, right? So stealing at the local CVS, stealing at the local Dwayne Reed, soaps and other feminine hygiene products. And unfortunately for Jay, she, like the other 42% of girls who are arrested, is charged with larceny theft. So when we look at children in the juvenile justice system, particularly girls, I recognize just being in the space, when we talk about what some would term criminal or offensive behavior, we don't talk about it in context, right? And so I raised that issue, really, being a voice for Jay in this space. So Jay, like other girls, don't, commit these offenses just to commit them. And we see that overwhelmingly for girls, that many of them engage in these survival behaviors that we criminalize as a society. And so one thing that I just raised, as we look to improve our communities is how do we deal with vulnerable populations, particularly children, right, who engage in, again, what we deem criminalized behavior. So I just wanted to raise that question. Right now, there are about 60,000 youth who are in the juvenile justice system. Of the 60,000, girls right now are one of the fastest growing populations. So although the rates of overrepresentation of the percentages of girls, although they vary significantly by jurisdiction, the national trends are pretty revealing. African American girls constitute 14% of the general population nationally, but make up 33.2% of girls detained and committed. Native American girls, also disproportionately involved in the juvenile justice system, although they represent literally 1% of the population, they make up 3.5% of girls who are detained and committed. LGBTQI youth and youth who are gender nonconforming only make up 5 to 7% of the general population, but make up about 13 to 15% of youth who come in contact with the juvenile justice system. Right now, our girls are in crisis. And unfortunately, in the overall discourse, and when we talk about policy decisions, they are largely ignored, and their needs are not in the conversation. What is apparent with justice-involved girls is that they overwhelmingly suffer from trauma and emotional and psychological abuse. In fact, 42% of girls who are involved in the juvenile justice system reporting having experienced past physical abuse. 35% have reported experiencing past sexual abuse. And what we found out was that reports of the connection between sexual abuse and prostitution is high. Right now, prostitution right now accounts for the largest offense that justice-involved girls are charged with. And so, unfortunately, we live in a society where we criminalize children who are rescued from prostitution, as opposed to safely diverting them to rehabilitative safe spaces. And this area, because the Greyhound is right there, is a hub. New York City is a huge hub for human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. And so what we lack is how do we best, support these girls and keep them safe. But right now, again, we criminalize. Another thing that I just leave you with, as I go around speaking, I just really urge just many of the people I have an opportunity to speak before is to see her. Like that's my message. See these children. Let's humanize our girls and boys, but particularly humanize our girls and see that these children are essentially crying out. And depending on the age and the experience, many of them don't have the language, literally. So the way that it looks, it manifests behaviorally, right, and through behavior. So when we see that 12-year-old girl stealing, the approach should be, let's not, necessarily call the police, right, to arrest her, but, let's call the police to get her some help. My ask is that we humanize her, and just as a community, again, I just leave you, how do we create these protective and safe spaces to best support the most vulnerable citizens of our society, these children, and in particular, girls. Thank you so much.